Have you guys heard of a little show series called SquidGames? You probably have, more than likely, right? Because everybody is fucking talking about this show. I'm gonna start by saying I would not recommend you watch it. I have not watched it myself. I had my cousin tell me about it because he was the one who kept mentioning it. He's in the UK and he's saying like everybody and literally their mothers were talking about this show. And what I said was, dude, that's always a red flag, man. Like, I've said this on this podcast in like episodes. Like last year, I talked about this a lot. I talked about zombies and sheep, and why, if you find yourself in a situation where like literally everybody's talking about the same exact same thing at the same exact same time, that is a programmed reaction. That is not by accident. That is intentional. And we saw what happened with that, right? A year later, actually almost 2 years later, here we are, and see what has kind of come up from that. So he mentioned it a few times. He just kept saying, have you seen the show? And I'm like, dude, like, stop mentioning this. Like, he's like, well, everybody's talking about it. Like, literally everybody's talking about it. And this was in England. And, so I went on Netflix. I didn't even search for the show. It popped up. And it just started playing this huge, it was very bright colors, which is weird, right? So for the subject matter, which is essentially people killing each other, it's basically Hunger Games, but like worse. Like it's like Hunger Games, but more obvious, like capitalism is the name of the game, so to speak. It's a not so subtle like reference to capitalism, and the concept of it is pretty fucked up, all things considered right now, and we delve into that. But the colors were just like bright and vivid, and it almost looked like a kid's thing, right? So all of the colors were set up in a way. I have a background in marketing and psychology, and I'm watching this, and it's like there's flashing certain colors. There is this, like, you start feeling this sort of draw to let me just watch this, right? I had that same feeling. And I obviously immediately clicked off of it. And then yesterday I went to go watch Netflix and I accidentally logged into my kid's Netflix. Now she has it set up, where there's like parental lock on there. So, she's not watching anything, over like a particular age limit, and all her recommendations are just cartoons. Now, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but when I go to her account, it's showing previews. Her child account, I don't know if this was a weird, like an accident or whatever, but the kid's account is showing previews for something, for a TVMA show. And once again, it's brightly colored. Now, if I was one of those people, I'm not going to make it about one of those people because that sounds fucked up. But if I was not present, that's better, right? If she was just like chilling, watching TV on her own, she would have watched that show, right? Why? Because it would have popped up. It popped up on her recommendations. This crazy show, which if you have not watched it, please Google it so you can see what the fuck this is about. She would have watched that on her own. Although I don't even know if she would, like, as her personally, because she's very mindful of like paying attention to things and ratings. And she's like that kid. I can't watch that, Mom. It's like TV 14. So you probably still wouldn't have or whatever. But if it was a regular, not weird kid, my kid's a little weird, but in a good way, she probably would have watched that. And now that shit would have been in her psyche. I mean, it was like, it's bright colors. It's red and green. They know what they're doing. Okay. So that was weird to me. I kind of freaked out a little bit when I went onto her Netflix account and it was there. Like, and it just started playing the preview, right? That was weird to me. And when I looked, it said, I checked to see when this thing had come out, and it just came out like 2-3 weeks ago. And like across the world, everybody's watching this. Be mindful of things like that, guys. That's why I wanted to really hop on the podcast today to tell you guys, when you see a bunch of people consuming the same exact thing, that's not by accident. It's intentional. Okay. It's premeditated. It's pre-planned. Be mindful of that. Case in point. This morning I got an email from Robinhood. saying that because of this show, Squid Games, Adidas, was it Adidas? No, Vans, noticed a 7,000% increase in sales. 7,000% increase in sales. Now, I talked to my cousin about it. When I saw that, I said, this show that you kept telling me to watch, and I'm telling you, it was intentionally put out to sort of steer the masses in a particular direction. And at first, he didn't listen to me. He was like, no, I don't think it's that serious. And I was like, all right, just sit back and wait for an old white guy to say the exact same shit that I just said to you, because that's typically how it works. I'll say something and he won't listen to me, or people that I talk to won't listen to me. And then a white guy comes around saying the exact same shit that I said. And then they're like, oh, remember the thing that you said? I'm like, yeah, I fucking said that already. Shut the fuck up. Right. So I'm going to say it. You guys heard it here. If it hasn't been said, I haven't heard anybody say. I'm going to say to you now, look up the writings of Edward Bernays. OK, this guy literally wrote the book on, mass hypnosis, mass movements. They call it now public relations because they didn't want to call it what it was, which is essentially subliminal programming. Right? This guy was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. I'm pretty sure he worked with the Nazis. This guy was the czar when it came to subliminal programming and moving the masses in a particular direction. And he wrote a book, a couple of books on the topic of propaganda, right? Which is essentially coercive movements, coercing the masses to behave in a particular way, to do particular things, to think particular things. Okay. He literally wrote the book on propaganda, right? And that was about 100 years ago, about a century ago, this was written. Do you think they haven't figured this shit out? They haven't sort of whittled it down in 100 years, got it down to an art form? Clearly. I mean, they've gotten more than enough time. And with technology now being the way that it is, it's so easy to move people this way and that. Much, much easier. We all have, it used to be where they would use, televisions. Now we have televisions, we have screens everywhere. So now you can move people at the drop of a hat, and we're all connected now. So now you have the internet. So it's not just, move people in one country. You can move people across the entire world towards one particular path. You need to understand that a lot of what we think of as, or we dismiss as, it's just mindless entertainment, is not just mindless entertainment. People are not investing millions of dollars into a TV show, into producing a TV show just so that you can be entertained, bro. They don't give a fuck about your happiness. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. 7,000%. It's mind blowing. 7,000. It's not like Vans is a small company. You have to think about how much white loafers that they had to sell to see a 7,000% uptick. And you have to understand too that the people who are financing these shows are in the business of making money. They knew, I'm about to sound like a conspiracy theorist. It is what it is though. But they knew before they put this show out there, hey, buy Vans, because this show literally is engineered in such a way that we will be able to move the masses to perform a particular action rather. Bet money. I literally would bet you money that this is this was intentional. Okay. Now, another thing, the way they timed it. If you Google, what did I Google today? Just as confirmation, I Googled, let me pull it up. Hold on. Elevator music. Do, 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 do. I took a screenshot. Okay, so I Googled white vans and checked the news today. It says South China Morning Post, SquidGame sparks huge interest in white van shoes and retro tracksuits. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, once again, haven't seen this show, it's like I said, it's like the Hunger Games. So from what my cousin told me, because I refuse to watch it. I will not watch it. I'm sorry. I apologize, guys, that I wasn't willing to put myself through whatever the fuck was going on. I saw enough with what they were doing with colors and things and flashing lights and things like that. Like, I saw enough to know, like, this is intentional. This is a fucking social experiment that is kind of like, there's no laws against this yet. So until people call them out and say, this is not right what you're doing, these companies, these corporations, the media giants will do what they need to do in order to make money until there are laws against it. And they laws take longer because of the bureaucratic bullshit that we're in, right? The society that we live in is so bureaucratic and so like bogged down with bureaucracy that like I talked about this in the All is AI episodes as well. Laws get created after the fact, right? If it's something new that somebody develops, you can essentially enact it upon the people, upon the masses. And then the law comes after the fact, after you're like, wait, like you can't do this, right? Then legislation comes in after the fact and says, okay, like you can't do this, right? It's always a reaction to something profound that has happened. And then they regulate. We're seeing that with crypto, right? People said, oh no, you want to invest in crypto because it's not like manipulated. Fucking bullshit. You see the same exact Bitcoin, Doge, Ethereum, they all move the exact same way. It's like the shit is heavily manipulated, but they are just now, after how many years has crypto sort of been a thing? They're just now talking about, okay, maybe we should have laws to probably regulate this shit. But they've also gotten their money out of it. Left regular people, quote, holding the bag, so to speak. They've done this. They pumped this. They used the media to pump crypto. And I have some crypto holdings. I'm just saying, see what the fuck is going on. Okay? And if you can't see it, that's okay. I'll point it out to you. But they use the media to pump shit, get everybody to jump on the bandwagon. So they buy in when it's low. Then they use the media. They don't give a fuck about us. Like, pretend I'm Michael Jackson and understand that this is a silent war between the haves and the have-nots. We're literally just stupid sheep to them. Understandably so. It's just, I'm not about to sit here and say that I don't believe that people are sheep, that the vast majority of people are sheep. I mean, look at what is happening. Look at what I'm talking about. The problem that I have is when people who are free thinkers aren't aware of what's going on and they're just getting kind of sucked in with the rest of them. So that's the point of this podcast, is to make people aware of what is going on, right? To make free thinkers, just a heads up. The sheep are being corralled this way. You might want to move the other way. That's all I'm trying to do. And I appreciate when you guys point things out to me that I may be missing too, but I don't want you guys getting swept away, with the herd. Okay. It's a silent game. Okay. So they buy in. You see this with crypto. They buy in when it's low. You see this with stocks. They buy in when it's low. Then they use the media intentionally. They do their bullshit. They use the media, the news, Jim Cramer, all those motherfuckers. Now they're even sending bots into Reddits and infiltrating like what was supposed to be, quote, grassroots movements, and right in little boards and groups and things like that. And they send people in there to pump the shit up. And then a bunch of regular people go in there, put in their savings or whatever, hoping to just make a quick buck to fucking survive. And then they decide when they're going to pull the rug out and dump. And they're using, AI now and we don't have a chance. And then they dump it. And then everybody that's like coming in with the bandwagon goes in and buys in at a high price point. But you're buying from them, from the 1%. And now you're stuck holding something that you wouldn't have held. You wouldn't have even thought about buying had you not trusted the media and trusted the random bots, on Reddit telling you just buy and hold, just buy and hold. Like, it's going to go to the moon. It's going to go, just not understanding how this shit works. Okay. Life is not what we have been programmed, especially if you went to public school. That's part of the system. You're programmed to perceive things in a particular way. You're programmed to behave in a particular way. And the way is that not a way that benefits you. It's in a way that benefits them. These are facts. Okay. So I'm going to go back. So I turn off, think about 2 weeks ago, I turn on the TV because my cousin keeps telling me about this stupid show, SquidGames. I'm looking and I'm seeing literally all my red flags are going up. Like, this is intentional. This is an exercise in mass hypnosis, but there's no laws really against what is happening. And that, like, you can't break the law if there's no law against it. And that's why you have to be mindful. Like, I really need you, I keep saying it in different ways. I need you to really understand that the people who do these sort of things, they don't do it just with media. They do it with technology as well, right? So I was going to start this episode talking about how I'm taking a break from TikTok. Because it's just so time consuming and it was taken away from my art. And it's also like, while I try my best to put out like the longest videos that they have available, I do try to put that out because I want people to be able to sit and focus for long periods of time and listen to what is being said and then think. I realized that may not work in that sort of format. And if you've watched 20 videos, if you just scroll past 20 videos of people just kind of like, a 10-second long video, you're priming your brain also to not focus on something for longer than like a short amount of time, like 10, 20, 30 seconds. I've had people comment and say, your 3-minute video felt really long. And my response to that is, that's your brain. You are losing the ability to focus on something for long periods of time. There's a book I mentioned before. I'll mention it again. It's called The Shallows: What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. There's another book. I think it's the same author. It's called Deep Work. And those two books are worth a read. I know I'm always mentioning books, but clearly they're on different topics. You really need to sit and listen and understand that this constant swiping culture, we're making ourselves dumb, right? To be in a state of flow, not only are we making ourselves dumb, we're also essentially like making ourselves mentally sick. And I'll break that down. To be in a state of flow, one has to be able to sit for long periods of time and focus on something for long periods of time. That's essentially what meditation is, right? Is you sit and you focus. It's a focus experiment. And then you catch your mind sort of wandering to this internal monologue, which I talked about in the last episode. We're going to revisit that a little bit as well. And when you catch your mind wandering, you shift it back. And they have shown that if you get yourself into the regular habit, into the regular practice of meditating, how it vastly improves your brain, how it vastly improves your quality of life, right? And how it helps you. It makes you more intelligent, more profound, okay? But we are now sort of existing in this culture where being able to sit and focus on something, we can't even, people are they're losing the ability. I've had a couple of people comment, I used to be able to read 10 books, a year or something like that. I had this one lady had said, and now I cannot sit and read anymore. And she commented that on TikTok, and she said, it breaks my heart. And I said, I recommend that you listen instead. Don't lose that love. It's not your fault, though. We were given these phones, these companies intentionally, they knew what they were doing by making everything short form, by putting all these, you've heard this, all the sounds, the sort of random rewards, things that the vibration here, the notifications, that it's intentional. We had they did it before we were even aware that a smartphone existed, before we even knew what the fucking app was. They sat down, they schemed. How can we make people addicted to this? Keep people swiping for hours, knowing that it's literally fucking their brains up. There were no laws against it. And so if you're saying there are no consequences for performing a particular action, and the people who are in charge of performing a particular action are people who are just so driven to make money that there's morality doesn't even come into play. Is this illegal? Will we get in trouble? Will we go to jail? There's no laws against it. Not yet. Let's do it. So much so that I've watched a lot of these executives almost jeer. Yes, they come out and they kind of seem like, oh yeah, they're telling us like what they did. And they almost seem like, oh, we feel really bad that we did it. But there is this aspect of like, you could tell they had little respect for the masses, of which we are a part of. Unless you happen to be a multi-billionaire listening to this, which if you are, go ahead and sponsor my show. You can email me at joliartist@fastmail.com. But the most of us are regular as fucking people, guys. You need to understand how this shit works. I'm really setting the stage. I'm repeating this shit. Before you knew what Twitter was, before they launched the app, before you were aware of an app, they knew Facebook, they knew what they needed to do to make sure that you were addicted to the product before you were even aware that the product existed. You need to know this. These people don't do things by accident. You need to know this. Okay? So what I'm saying to you, going back to SquidGames, I have some background in psychology, and I have some background in marketing. Okay. There's a book. I can't remember because I did several takes before I started recording. It just takes a little time to get into the topic. So if I'm repeating myself, or I'm sorry, it might have been the first take. And if I'm not repeating myself, then ignore everything I just said. But there's a book called Propaganda that was written by Edward Bernays. This guy was a nephew, I believe, of Sigmund Freud. And he literally wrote the book on propaganda, on how to move the masses. And a lot of the ideas were also utilized against the Germans by the Nazis. Okay? This was 100 years ago. They rebranded the name to public relations so that it doesn't come off as nefarious as what it actually is. But it was he was all about using, subliminal messaging to coerce people, to steer people down a particular path. That was almost 100 years ago, if not 100 years, it's a whole century ago. They have had time. They don't do this shit by accident. They have had time to perfect ways to steer the masses in the path that they want them to go. They want us to go. You need to be mindful of this, okay? So when we go back to SquidGames, they released it right before Halloween, okay? Couple of weeks before Halloween. And then they pumped it across the board everywhere, right? They put it on my daughter's. It's a TVMA show. My daughter's Netflix account is only for kids. And yet I accidentally logged into her account, like I said. And if I'm repeating again, I don't know if this was the first take or what, so sorry. But I accidentally logged into her Netflix account, and this shit was playing. The preview was automatic, and it's a lot of bright colors. Like there's a mask that looks like a kid's thing, and it's called SquidGames. And squid is kind of a fun word, and so is games. So you think, oh, some kind of game show. It's not set. There's nothing. If you just saw, oh, this looks interesting, and you ignored everything, you've just essentially opened your mind to receive something that you may not have under normal circumstances been, mentally prepared for. And now imagine there's kids watching this. Well, why was that on her channel? Even as an option, it should not have been. You think they give a fuck about your kids? You think they give a fuck about you? Personally? Variety, 4 days ago, the Squid Game costume effect. White slip-on Vans spike 7,800% since the series premiere. Netflix Squid Games prompts spike in sales of white slip-on Vans. That's an independent article and Variety article. Squid Games has caused white Vans slip-on shoes to fly off of the shelves. Now, think about this, guys. Watch. And this is perfectly timed because Halloween's 2 weeks away. You're going to remember this podcast. You're going to look around on Halloween. There's going to be a bunch of dumbasses running around. And if you're one of the dumbasses that went out and got the Vans and the jumpsuit, you just got programmed. It's if you get that many people performing a particular actions, that's intentional. If you get that many people performing a particular action, it is intentional. It is engineered. Every one of those people who went and bought Vans. Vans is not a small company. I have white Vans. They're not slip-ons. I have my Chucks, my high-top Chucks. But these particular ones, it's not like it was a specific one because of that show. You're gonna go out for Halloween, and I guarantee you're gonna see a bunch of dumb motherfuckers running around. I apologize if you are one of the dumb motherfuckers who went and bought. You got your tracksuit ready to go and the Vans, but you just got programmed. You're gonna see them running around. That's scary to me. Because every single one of those people probably thought they were being unique. Every single one of those people, remember I keep saying, like, this shit is an illusion. Unless you make yourself aware of what the fuck is going on, you are being controlled by forces that you're not even fucking aware of. Each one of those people who went out and got the white Van slip-on specifically because of that show and the tracksuit probably didn't think that hundreds of millions of people were doing the exact same thing. They thought it was a free choice. They thought they were doing something unique. And I'm telling you, all this shit is intentional. Not even is. I'm telling you, all this shit was intentional. As in, before it even hit Netflix, they already knew what they wanted, the effect that they wanted it to have. I'm checking on Netflix's stock right now. It would be interesting to see. I mean, it's worth $627. Why? It's actually close to its 52-week high at a quarter where stocks are typically more on the lower end. And here we go. Netflix to partner with Walmart. This is 1 hour ago. Netflix to partner with Walmart to sell Squid Game merchandise and other products online. It's a game. We're in a game within a game. We're in a game within a game. And the game that we are in, right, the overall simulation, within it, you have other sort of players that are also sort of maneuvering pieces, like we're pieces in their game. There's a silent war going on between the haves and the have-nots. You need to understand that. What concerns me the most is, so there's one thing I noticed, for example, like people now on social media are like advertising their vaccine status. I don't care what you do with your body, but HIPAA was a law for a reason, right? Like you have the right to your medical privacy. That's weird. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because right now, things are the way they are. I'm not under any sort of illusion like that we have freedom of speech. I'm not saying that that's okay, but I also believe that you pay attention, read the room, right? Pay attention to the surrounding, the circumstances that you found yourself in, and react accordingly. I'm not trying to be a hero. I just be seeing shit and commenting on it, right? Just call me the Joker. But I want you to really sit and think about this whole thing. This is not the first time they've pulled something like that. But this might be the first time they've done it in such a large scale, and it was intentional. I didn't see any. Did you see any ads for it? On on TV? No. It just spread like wildfire, word of mouth. Across the world, people are talking about this show. And that's what I told my cousin. I said, no, that's creepy. You are all the way in England. You're talking about a South Korean show that everybody is watching. You want me to watch it? No, thank you. No, that's not right. Something's going on there. Things don't move that fast. He was like, well, what about Game of Thrones? He said, no, Game of Thrones, you can't compare the two. Squid Games just came out like 2 weeks ago. Game of Thrones, like, I didn't jump on Game of Thrones like the first 3 years. I started watching it season 5. A lot of people were talking about it. I thought it was interesting. But, like, not everybody jumped on the bandwagon immediately, like, within 2 fucking weeks. 2 weeks. A whole ass series. People have, like, binged. And you certainly didn't see it leading, to, like, sales of anything skyrocketing that much. 7,800%. That's not the same thing. So now that they've seen what they can do, what Netflix can do with these sort of whatever sort of tactic, because we saw the same thing happen in 2016 with the Cambridge Analytical scandal. A lot of people don't really realize or understand what exactly happened during the 2016 elections. But I would implore you to really look into how social media was used as essentially a weapon to destabilize a lot of countries, including the West. And it was used again before the 2020 elections in 2019. And everybody wants to pin the nail on like Netflix, on Facebook, like it's just them. It's not. If it's not illegal, they're going to test it on you. I said this to my kids today. We were on our way to school. We were talking about, this is so, like, these are conversations I have with my kid, but I said, look, we live in a society where essentially, I think I said, we were talking about smoking, and I don't know how it came up, but I said, it's funny that in 2021, people are still smoking cigarettes. That's weird to me. Like, you might as well just stick your mouth directly onto like an exhaust pipe and take a breath in. And she said something to the effect of, I guess because it doesn't like immediately kill you. Like one of the two will kill you immediately, right? Like an exhaust pipe versus a cigarette. And I was like, you're absolutely right. There's something called, I think it's called a soft kill or a slow kill. If I come up with a product and it kills you in like 2 weeks, that's murder. I can be charged with murder. But if I come up with a product that I know is lethal, but it won't kill you unless you use it for 20 years, that's that's marketing, right? That's capitalism. And I'm a capitalist in the sense of like because that's the only sort of means that I am aware of that I think works right now because of the way we are conditioned. Okay, so just FYI. But I'm also like a realist. Okay, so if I come up with a product, and we've seen this with products that companies intentionally put out. Talc, Johnson & Johnson, causing ovarian cancer. Until somebody can directly link your product to something that's killing people, you can coast. You saw this in the movie Fight Club, right? It's cheaper to allow people to die of some fucked up disease than to recall a product or just put money aside for a lawsuit than to change the product. They will choose what option is least expensive for the corporation and fuck the masses. These are facts. And once again, like if your product that you put out, they're putting BPA, which is linked to all this, like even the things that they put on Teflon to make things that are non-stick. You have people coming out and saying this shit's bad for you. And then you have the corporations that hire their scientists to sort of muddy the waters and say something that's kind of different or use terminology that's sort of weird so that you're not quite sure what's true or not. They know what they're doing. And we're sort of dispensable to them because if you're sick from their product, that feeds another corporate, it feeds another corporation, right? Big pharma. You need to see the world for what it is. It's not all, look, nature in itself is beautiful. And I found a lot of peace, especially with just being more and more mindful, making myself more and more mindful of the influence of my internal monologue. I found a lot of peace there. For however long it lasts, I'm grateful for that. But because of the system that we have controlled for, or created for ourselves, we're sort of creating hell. We're creating a dystopia within, what could have been something better. I'm not saying that this world is it's possible for us to even have some sort of a utopia. But we can have something better than what we have now. And so to live in this world and to not make yourself aware that what we have now is, there's wolves steering the sheep. And the wolves socialize with themselves. And when you get to a certain level, where you're making a certain amount of money and you start looking at the rest of the world, at the masses with a certain level of disdain, and then you start to separate yourself from the masses. I'm not saying there's anything I don't know if there's anything inherently wrong with that because, look, if you look around and you see people behaving like sheep and you're not, it is really easy for the ego to create separation and say, okay, and other people, right? To other people, right? Well, those are them. Now, add some billions to the mix and you do start to really feel like, okay, like I am superior. And then when you echo the sentiment of there's billions of people on the planet, and then you subscribe to the ideology that, okay, there's probably too many people on this planet and we're destroying the planet, which a lot of these, quote, elites subscribe to, it's only a matter of time before we are expendable to them and literally just a means to whatever monetary goal they have. Pay attention. This is not going to be the last time we're going to see something like this. I just want to call it to your attention. There's going to be another time because now that they know how it works, I mean, come on, capitalism. We live in a capitalistic society. There's no laws against whatever they just did. Now that they know that they can do this, they will do it. You're going to see it more and more. I'm not an investor. I may not have even been part of the people who, obviously I'm not part of the people who put together this whole SquidGame things and coerce people in this way. And it's interesting because even the baits that they use, I'll get back to that. I'll come back to that. But But if I did have money to invest and I looked and I saw 7,800% increase, oh yeah, I'm calling some executives at Netflix and saying, what did you guys do here? I'm interested. And that was an advertisement. So when the media is not talking to you, it's a tool that the elites use to communicate with each other and to coerce the masses to behave in a way that they want them to behave. These are facts, guys. Just read. I mentioned Bernays. Go online and you can find a lot of his stuff on, DuckDuckGo, on Google, on Bing, whatever. Edward Bernays. Read that stuff. It's intentional. They know what they're doing. This shit isn't by accident. I'm going to sidestep a couple of things because I keep wanting to talk about this. This is kind of related. Understand that when you watch movies, they're serving the purpose, and shows, things like that a lot of people love, understand that there's minds behind them trying to push a particular narrative. So a lot of these movies are also function as propaganda. Okay? Case in point, I was discussing The Dark Knight Returns. I believe it was The Dark Knight Returns with a friend of mine. We were talking about the Joker and how we actually identified more with the ideology of the Joker. He was nihilism embodied. He was existentialism embodied, right? And we also discussed that Batman was a fucking fascist, which is true. Dude's a fucking fascist, okay? But the quote, bad guys were so cartoonish. I mentioned this before, how whenever a villain is portrayed on shows, they make them so fucking cartoonish that it's hard to relate to them. And they make it hard to relate to them because they make them so on the nose evil, because they don't want you to relate to them. They tie in their philosophy with crazy, stupid actions, crazy behaviors, or just something where it's a character that you just you don't want to be tied to. Right? So to take a philosophy like Nietzsche's and Dostoevsky's, and then you put that into Heath Ledger's Joker, where he's sort of this one-dimensional villain who keeps shifting his story. He's got he's disfigured, whatever. You put it into the body of the Joker, what you're doing inherently is saying, anybody who thinks this is essentially a clown, right? They just want anarchy, right? By definition, right? For every person I've said anarchy to, they automatically jump to a state of chaos. And I keep trying to point out to them that anarchy does not equate to chaos. That is a programmed response. Anarchy just means without leaders, and meaning without archons, leaders. It's just a state without leaders. What's happening is you are programmed with the media to believe that if you have no leaders, I've said this several times and I'm going to keep saying this. They want you to believe that if you live in a state without leaders, it will be chaotic. You need order. You need a police state. Remember in the Batman Rises where Returns, where this motherfucker turned on everybody's cell phones and had them spying on people, and Morgan Freeman's character was that's not right. And he was just it's a necessary evil. I don't care. And he was and Morgan Freeman's character was if you're going to keep this at Wayne Enterprises, I'll step down. But that was not okay. He didn't need that. You didn't need to spy on millions of fucking people. But that movie also came out right around the Bush era. And it was in a weird sort of way to subliminally, because you had the hero doing it. You had the hero spying on millions of people and invading their privacy to catch one clown. That he didn't even need to know that, to do that. He already knew what Joker was going to do. Because the Joker told him what he was going to fucking do. That video, that movie, and it's made by, directors that we respect. but they don't work for us. We don't pay their bills. Not off the bat. We're not the investors in there. Whatever the movie ends up making after the fact, that's different. But who's writing the checks initially? It's not us. That's propaganda. So in a movie like that, you have the, quote, hero of the story, which is a rich guy who, first of all, this motherfucker goes to like an Asian country to learn, a particular sort of martial arts or whatever, right? That is unique to that culture. I think I've talked about this before, but I'm going to say it again, damn it. And if I haven't, cool. Learns from them. Yeah. Now they bring forth a murderer. This is part of their ritual, right? This guy is a murderer, kill him. And a couple of things happened before he got to that point where he's explaining to the other white guy that, I think he's explaining that he's not a criminal. It's been a while, but he's saying, I'm not a criminal. That even though he lived amongst criminals, so when he left, when Batman left, when Bruce Wayne left Gotham and went to, all these different countries, he lived like a criminal. He was like, I had to live like a criminal to kind of understand how criminals think, but I was never one of them, even though he's like literally fucking stealing. And as they're telling the story, discussing criminals, the camera pans to a young black boy, subliminal. Like you see what they fucking do this shit all the time, by the way, right? So you hear criminal and then they show you a black boy. Go watch it. Go watch the Batman movies. I think this was like the first one where they do that. And he says, but I'm not a criminal, but he's like actively stealing shit. And then at the end, he gets arrested, but it's like Wayne Enterprises. So he justifies that even though the acts that he committed were criminal acts, because it was Wayne Enterprises, he's not a criminal. So because he was wealthy, you see what they fucking do? You see what they fucking do? Because he was wealthy, he's not a thief. All right, so he's different from these common criminals who are just one-dimensional characters who just steal shit. You see what they do? I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to try to remember this when I go back and talk about SquidGames, because that was the hook that I mentioned. Actually, I'm going to talk about it right now because I don't want to forget. There's a game called Illuminati Card Games. And first of all, I don't believe in an Illuminati. If there is a secret organization, corporation that's like controlling everything, it's not going to be called the Illuminati because it can't be secret if all of us fucking, quote, know about it and we're all saying the same thing. That's intentional. Right? It's literally just like CEOs, board members of all of these like big pharmaceutical companies, big media, and we know their names. There's nobody hiding in the shadows, so to speak. They just want you to think that way to increase like a fear and mystique around them so that you feel like they're like, it's like the Wizard of Oz. He used a lot of theatrics. All right, I'm the wizard, but he was just an old man. He's just an old, rich white man. I'm just call it what it is. Okay? So don't feed into that bullshit. But there was an Illuminati card game that came out in the 1980s. Google it. And then they issued the cards in the 90s. Ignore the newer cards. Look for the older ones from like the 90s. A lot of this shit that we're seeing right now are literally cards in the game. And this is not to attach any mysterious bullshit to it. It's just that our society is so controlled that they literally, the haves play the same cards. They play literally the same cards over and over again. They without rarely deviating from it. So, for example, when a bunch of people all started chanting the same mantra, eat the rich, I Googled it. There is an Illuminati card, eat the rich. This game was created in the 80s. Damn near 40 years later. Almost 40 years later. It's the same cycles. Use the wrong pronouns, right? That's the thing right now. Like you use the wrong pronouns. There is an Illuminati. You can Google it. Just type in, use the wrong pronouns, Illuminati cards. You'll see it. It's like two people being like hung. And the sign says because they used the wrong pronouns. It's the same cards. When a bunch of people are saying the same thing, eat the rich, eat the rich, eat the rich. Right? It's a coerced movement. So Squid Games. That's how that show like was promoted. Oh, it's commentary on capitalism. Okay, yeah, that's how they get you to watch, because they baited you. They primed your mind, right? Capitalism is bad, eat the rich people are evil. But all they're trying to really do is to get everybody to pay more taxes. They go, no, we're just gonna tax the rich, right? To the point now you're working for the government. You're gonna blink and half of your goddamn paycheck is going to be going to taxes. You're earning and somebody's taking half your shit. The fucking Revolutionary War was fought for less than that. Insatiably, like incredibly less than half of our money is just gone. You don't even get to, they take that shit. Take that shit from you're a slave. And if the government was using it for good, like if we were driving down the streets and there weren't homeless people in the fucking streets and fucking needles on the ground, right? If they were properly housed and properly fed and had the proper care that they deserve, right? If you didn't have potholes destroying your car, right? If we had a legal system that was actually just and a police department that was actually clean, I could almost justify that. Fine. If you had something to show for it, if you had kids that were going to school and they were actually being educated. But we're getting fucking robbed. And they always start with the false hope, like apparently they did in that show that I didn't watch, but based on what my cousin described to me, that's what they do. Like, but the people controlling the game is rich people. Give us half your shit. For what? You're not even properly managing the money I've been giving you. And I'm supposed to give you more? Fuck you. Why don't you work with what I've been giving you? But they start. It's the rich people's fault. It's the rich people's fault. It's the rich people. No, it's the government's fault. If the rich people, if wealthy people are hoarding money, then you need to figure out a way to make it so that, yes, across the board, like that the taxes are fair across the board. Because the reason why they're coming out of ways to like bypass these things is because you're taking half their shit and wasting it. You're taking half my shit too. I'm not a millionaire, but you're taking half my shit and wasting it. What do I have to show for this? Whereas in other countries, it's not this way. There's a book called The Sovereign Individual that was written by I don't even know who this, like some lord, some English lord and some American guy, I don't know. But a lot of the stuff that they talk about in that book, you skip the first couple of chapters that deal with like, because it was written back in the 90s and he was like predicting like what he thought was going to happen in Y2K. But everything else was pretty accurate. Like this dude predicted like cryptocurrency and PayPal and literally everything that's happening right now. Like he straight up talks about when governments start to lose power, they will essentially utilize a pandemic in order to control people and keep them from traveling. Like verbatim, he said it. It's actually on my YouTube. I put a clip on it somewhere on my YouTube. If I didn't take it down, you can go listen to it. Yeah. But he said, if I make a phone call, if I use a phone, this is before cell phones, right? If I use a phone call to make like a business deal where I end up making $500,000 on the business deal, right? Should you charge me more in taxes because of how much money I made during the phone call? Or should everybody just pay the same for the service of making phone calls? I know it's really like in right now to be like, eat the rich and let's like, who needs billions of dollars? That ideology. Okay. I get that. But literally, if everybody just across the board, you have there's other ways to think about things than what is being sort of perpetuated. Because what you're doing is they're doing this on purpose too. Right? It's like, let's create more of that duality. You're not going to agree with it. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying. Like, I'm already feeling some of you guys feeling like, no, like, billionaires, fuck them. They should pay. Like, okay, That's how it starts. That's why I have a problem with it. They're going to start with them, with these billionaires who are going to figure out a way because they have billions of dollars. And these multimillionaires are going to have millions of dollars. They're going to figure out a way to get around these laws. Sorry. That's a harsh reality. That's facts. You guys don't understand how much billions is. And all these laws and everything like that, like if they wanted to get around the laws, they have the wealth to do so. And then what they're going to do is then turn it, because once again, like it's on our backs that this shit is built. Up until this point, it has been us carrying this country, providing the wealth of this country. We're trillions of dollars in debt. So clearly the government has not been managing our money well enough. Like if you were paying me money, you're giving me like 30% of your paycheck, 40% of your paycheck for me to like clean your house. But every time you came home, your house just got dirtier and dirtier and was just falling apart. And I just was like, I need more money. Wouldn't you be like, but why should I give you more money? You aren't even taking care of the shit that I've been paying you for. No, we need more. Fuck you. I don't want to let me keep my money across the board. If a person making $100,000 a year, 40% of that is gone. You're working 100% of those hours, and it's just going to somebody who's, putting it into developing more and more weapons. Like, what the fuck? Like, they're just not doing anything good with your money. Wouldn't you be like, you know what? How about no? So they're gonna start, and they're watch. You don't have to agree with me right now, but I do have a knack for saying things that people tend to disagree with during the time, and then I end up being right. So that's fine. Disagree with me right now, but I guarantee you're going to come back 2 to 3 years, be like, fuck, she was right. So they bait people with the whole, eat the rich, let's tax the rich. The wealthy are going to find a way. They're going to find ways around this, as they do, because they can afford to pay the right attorneys to find the right legal loopholes to avoid doing, because that's what they've done this whole fucking time. And then they're going to end, but it's not even about them, because once again, they're really like 0.01%. It's about us. It's about the rest of the 99%. Then we're going to see an increase in our taxes. It's not about them. That's just the bait. Just like in SquidGames, they told us, oh, it's a show about capitalism, right? It's a show about the evils of capitalism. Okay, that's great. So they get you to watch it. So you're watching it. You're watching people just brutally murder each other for fiat money, right? Organs are being sold, and wealthy people are investing on watching people kill each other, by the way. That's another thing. Spoiler alert. Sorry. But in the real world, 7,500, you're feeding capitalism. That's how they bait you. It's bullshit. It's really trendy right now to be like, eat the rich and fuck capitalism. And then somebody shows up and sells you a t-shirt that says, eat the rich, fuck capitalism. Or they sell you a show that says, fuck capitalism. And you're watching it and you're consuming it and being programmed to go out and buy more shit. I need you to think beyond what's just right in front of our faces. And the easiest sort of mantra that you can kind of hold on to is when a bunch of people are talking about or saying the same thing. If you see it on social media being repeated over a bunch of people saying the same thing, that is intentional. A bunch of people watching the same thing, that is intentional. A bunch of people talking about the same thing, that is, it's intentional. I talked about this last year. You can go back and listen to my older episodes where I'm like, everybody's talking COVID. This is right at the beginning. COVID. Fear. Right? You just watch them move the masses, move them this way, move them that way. Right? You saw everybody take to the streets in March. And then they filmed that. Then you saw everybody, on the opposite end, you saw so you had people on the left take to the streets, Then you had people on the right storm the Capitol. And it's just, and then the camera is always on there. And then they blast it on TV. And then we sit staring, consuming, waiting for commercials. This riot is brought to you in part by whatever the fuck. So I'm going to go back to Batman. Batman is a fascist. And he is portrayed as the hero. The movie is just pure propaganda. You're basically telling people that a person who steals, right, is inherently different, is inherently lower than. Bro, the word villain, the etymology of the word villain came from what you would call a commoner, a villager. It meant a common person. Do you understand what's going on? Let's look beyond the surface. Villain now has become to mean somebody who is inherently evil. But it really just means a common person, somebody who was not of noble class. And that's literally what Batman depicted. The movie Batman, the three of them depicted to the T. And now I haven't watched the third one with Bane in the wall, but from what I understand, Bane was trying to hold the people actually responsible for financial crisis that caused millions of people to suffer. He was trying to hold them responsible, and he was the bad guy. He was the villain. All right? And here comes fascist Batman to save the day by any means necessary. I want to talk about something that's kind of really stupid that in the movie Batman. I'm just going to just call it out so that you guys can understand this straight up. This is ridiculous. And I don't understand why this guy is even this is probably why these movies don't do very well, if we're being honest. Batman's parents were supposed to be multi-billionaires or whatever, right? So they built this railway station, and yet his mom and his dad decided to ride a train into town to go to an opera, to watch the opera. And the mom is wearing a fur coat and opulent ass pearls on a fucking subway. Are you stupid? I don't care how rich you are. Who rides the subway in anything as ostentatious as a fur coat and pearls? Are you stupid? That's weird. So you're just asking to get mugged, right? So the fact that they were able to ride the subway, whatever the fuck, the train to the opera was all right, good. You already dodged that bullet. Now they're watching the opera. I want you guys to really think about it. I'm also going to go back to what I was talking about when I was talking about where he got trained and what happened there. I didn't forget. So they're watching the opera. The father decides, all right, I don't want to watch this anymore. This is boring. And instead of going out the front, like a normal fucking person, yeah, they go out the back into a shitty, dark alley where there's trash everywhere and no witnesses with their child. Who does that? Honestly, who does that? And then, of course, they get mugged because why not? Where's your driver? Where were they going to take a dark alley and walk back to the stuff? You didn't think at any point between back alley of a subway station or back alley of a fucking opera house and the subway. I'm guessing they're going to take the subway at 1:00 at night. You're wearing a fur coat and a suit, bro. You're not even trying to be inconspicuous. And somehow that was his whole, oh, it's a criminal. I understand the criminal crimes, but I'm not a billionaire. I'm not a fucking millionaire. I don't even go outside of my house in the dark. And I live in a nice enough neighborhood. I don't put myself in situations and in circumstances where things could to increase the likelihood of something happening to me. You went out in the back alley and then you got surprised that you got robbed and then accidentally shot. And now that was enough to send this dumbass kid onto a crusade of just like, oh, I'm going to change everything. But this was kind of your fault. Your dad's a fucking idiot. Like, what in what reality is that okay? Can we watch these movies with some critical thinking? Because we just go, oh, that's the hero. I've talked about this. Like, that's the hero. That's the villain. Let's just accept whatever bullshit's thrown at us without like thinking critically. Right? So you take the philosophy of Nietzsche and Dostoevsky, who basically said, like, yes, life is in a way meaningless. We really don't have a lot of free will, and anybody on any given day, like on a bad day, can become a bad person. That is true. And it's actually a compassionate approach to life, saying that I'm not much different from you. This is from the cartoons, but I just had fucked up like life experiences, and you took one path where you decided to be like a vigilante, and I took a different path. But we're essentially inherently the same thing, which is human beings trying to make sense of the fucked up world we found ourselves. But that philosophy is put not in the hero, but in the villain. And then they have the villain's character just do crazy retarded, like, excuse me, I say retarded a lot. I don't mean it like in an offensive sense. I just mean it like in like the retarded sense. But they say, they put him in an offensive, like they have this character that is saying things that are inherently profound. A lot of what the Joker said is inherently profound. But then the directors, people who create these shows, they want you to disregard what is being said, or to link their actions with, okay, chaos, right? If people really did believe this, they would be chaos. There would be destruction. People would just, kidnap people or like bomb hospitals and things of that nature. And that's just not true. We constantly live in a state where we police ourselves, where we rule ourselves, and it isn't chaos. I've used this analogy before. Even just driving down the street, if there are no cops and there are no cameras, we still know how to behave. We don't need so many laws. We don't need so much control. And the more we are controlled, the more we are suppressed, the more you're sort of increasing the likelihood of people lashing out. I like Black Panther. Killmonger is kind of the same thing. His philosophy was understandable. It was relatable. But then they had him doing things that were really like, just like, why do you keep like killing women? Like, why do you choking women, right? So his behavior it was almost like they just threw that in there so that the character could not relate to the villain too much. It's like, oh, let's just remind you that even though he thinks this way, that is totally relatable and completely understandable, all things considered, he's the bad guy, so we're going to have him do do this stupid thing. But a lot of people came away from that movie thinking, like, I totally understand. And while we loved the actor that played Black Panther, people were like, still like, well, I kind of understand why Killmonger did what he did. It's a shame that he didn't, he's going around like kind of choking people. But if you're watching people who look like you suffer, and you have the ability to really make change and you're not doing anything about it, you're kind of a dick. And so we have to really be mindful to really understand that a lot of the things that we're told, okay, this is how a hero behaves. A lot of these heroes are dangerous. A lot of them, because they have power, we become sort of collateral damage. And I think that's a real lesson here. You see this Superman, powerful, I think Homelander was pretty good. Sort of a more realistic representation of what, Superman, which is basically America, right? Well, all powerful, but you are causing a lot of destruction, all, under the guise of, no, I'm going to protect and freedom, justice, and the American way and all that bullshit. But like everybody else, like people who aren't like main characters in your life, become sort of collateral damage for whatever goal you're trying to, attain for the greater good, in quotes, right? So back to Batman. He's wealthy, right? That's his superpower, money. And he's bored in life, doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. So he just decides, oh, well, since a bad guy, even though my parents were being really fucking stupid, accidentally shot my parents, now I'm going to surpass, like, I'm not going to be like, okay, I'm going to be a cop. Nah, I'm rich. I'm not going to debase myself in that way. Yeah, I'm going to flout the law. I'm going to become a law unto myself. And in some Batman movies, he literally says, I am the law. That is telling. If you have enough money, you can be the law. You can circumvent pre-established rules. And we see that. We see that with a certain billionaire who's doing whatever the fuck. I'm not going to say names, but you guys know who I'm talking about. You have a couple of them doing that. They just go, oh, we don't really need to follow the law. I'm different. What are you going to do? Find me? Okay. Well, whatever you can legally find me, I wipe my ass with. I make in a day. So that's not really a control. And after a while of, people continuously telling you how special you are, you start to believe that shit. The first Batman movie, go back and watch it. Or don't. I'll tell you what he does. So after his father basically put him in harm's way and basically caused the death of his wife, he, as an adult, goes to Asia, like I said, crimes in order to understand criminals. I don't understand why you have to commit crimes to understand criminals. Like, it speaks there to a lack of empathy. Like, I understand criminals. Like, I don't need to be a criminal. I'm a human being. I can understand people going, yeah, I think I'm going to do this because for whatever reason, maybe the way they were raised, maybe they have mental illness, maybe it's just a circumstance of, and even watching, you know how I showed you when they talked about criminals and they panned to a young black kid to like subliminally program that, black people are criminals. They do this a lot with movies. You start paying attention, I'm telling you. You would think he would come away from that with some level of empathy, like, an understanding that it's not across the board that people are like that, but he doesn't. He's just a rich white guy. And that's a hero. Who believes himself to be above the law. So he learns all the martial arts. Then he goes, and there was one more test. He has to kill this guy that's a murderer. And the lead, Asian guru guy, whatever, that teaches him everything that they have historically protected, known and protected is it's of their culture. Says, okay, you have to kill this guy, he's a murderer. And Batman goes, I don't kill. Arbitrarily, I don't kill. Okay? So bear that in mind. He goes, I don't kill. So he refuses to kill the guy. Starts fighting not only the master, like the Asian master that taught him everything he knows, but also the people that he had been in this monastery with, like his friends. I would assume he became friends with these other people. And I'm sure they're also Asians, right? Because the way these things go, we don't see the faces of these people. But it's just a two white guy. The guy from Taken was the other guy, whatever his name was. And then Bruce Wayne. So as a result of him, quote, refusing to kill, right? I don't kill. He ends up killing or causing the deaths of everybody in this monastery, right? Lights the place on fire. The whole place starts falling. He's like fighting and attacking all of these other people. The guy who he was supposed to kill ends up dying anyway. This fucking boulder like falls and then like causes like a, wood to fall off and like, kill his master. So he's dead. And this motherfucker like sees all of that shit, lets everybody die except saves the one white guy. Yeah. Go watch it. Saves the one white guy, Liam Neeson's character, puts him somewhere safe. And then like the next scene, he hops up onto his private jet and goes back to Gotham City with his butler. Like nothing fucking happened. Can we think about that from the perspective of like the families of all of those people whose deaths he just caused, right? Because he wouldn't kill this one person that was like literally like a menace to society. He just arbitrarily decided, I am the law and I don't do this thing, so I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to facilitate the deaths of all these other innocent people that I've trained with for how many fucking years that have become like family. Fuck them, right? But I'm going to save the one white guy, make sure he's fine. Then I'm going to hop in my private jet like nothing happened. No remorse, no fucking nothing. This is the hero that we are supposed to unconsciously sort of venerate. This behavior is okay. He shows no empathy. And now he's back in Gotham to fight crime. Now that I understand criminals and I have my magic bat abilities or whatever, I'm gonna show them what I'm afraid of. Like, okay, just because you're afraid of that's another sort of fucking closed-minded weird kind of thing, right? Like ethnocentric. Just because you have fear of bats doesn't mean everybody else does. Like, that's weird. That's just your thing. But sociopath, like he's incapable of putting himself in other people's shoes. He just says, oh, well, I'm afraid of this thing, so like everybody's afraid of it. That's fine. Weird. But if you watch these things, it is a program. They're called programs for a reason. And all the marketing and everything like that, a lot of this stuff too tends to be funded by the government. And if you think this shit is unintentional, if you think that this is an accident, if you don't think that this is propaganda, like in the case of Batman, and sometimes in the case of even Superman, I haven't watched those recently, but if you watch the things that they do, that they kind of want you to be okay with, that they low-key kind of justify, it's okay that we spy on people for the greater good. We're just trying to protect you. And look at where we are now. Yeah, so they sort of slowly get you sort of conditioned and okay with that shit. Now here we are, a decade later. In one case, it's the government kind of promoting certain videos, or sponsoring it. You're not the one writing their checks. And on the other end, it's corporations. That's where we're at. Anyway, a little off topic today. I just want to bring some things to you guys' attention. I don't know. I guess everything is kind of on topic. I mean, it is my podcast. I can talk about whatever I want. But the SquidGames things, that was a sort of like, you guys need to really be mindful of that. I don't know if you guys have actually watched it. I personally I'm not going to watch it. But I just want you guys to be mindful of when all of a sudden a bunch of people are talking about the same thing at the same time. Remember, all right? And I know you guys are going to go out for Halloween. And I guarantee you're going to see a bunch of people who thought they were being unique running around in suits. And even from what I read, what that was about, what that show was about, and what these people wearing suits signifies, I mean, a lot of people are in debt and are that desperate that if they were presented in that situation with that sort of solution to their problems, they may take it. It makes it even more disturbing. Like it really does. And it's almost like is like a mockery. Like the more people that we see running around like that, the more the people who kind of put this together, it's like they're mocking us. In a way. Anyway, that's my quote conspiracy theory for the week. Just stay conscious. All right, I hit you guys up. Maybe later this week, but definitely by next week. All right, take it easy.